Good morning, students. As part of pre-board preparation, in the last class we have discussed the chapter Fundamental Unit of Life. So today's class, let us discuss a part of tissues chapter, not completely, but a part. In unicellular organisms, single cell itself performs all basic functions of the cell or of the entire organism, because the cell itself is the entire organism. In multicellular organism, there are many cells, and all the functions of that organism cannot be carried out by single cell. Each specialized function is carried out by a different group of cells. That group of cells that carries out a specialized function in the multicellular organism is known as tissue. Example, muscular tissue, blood, nervous tissue, like that, so many are there. If you take the muscular tissue, it carries out movement. Blood is a liquid connective tissue. It carries out the transport of respiratory gases, digested food, excretory substances, etc. If you take the plants' vascular tissues, they carry out the conduct of food and water. Xylem and phloem are there. They are the vascular tissues. Xylem conducts water and phloem conducts food. In multicellular organism, by having different types of tissues, division of labor is achieved. Plants and animals are made up of different types of tissues, because plants are stationary and animals are motile. Plants are autotrophic, animals are heterotrophic. Plants can grow much bigger in size, whereas animals can grow little smaller in size than compared to many larger plants. How these differences are achieved? Because plant bodies and animal bodies are made up of different types of tissues. Let us try to understand some differences between plants and animals. Plants have more supportive tissues because most of the plants, or say almost all plants, are stationary or fixed, means they do not move from one place to another place. As they do not move from one place to another place, they need more support, because they will have to come across various external pressures. Whenever they are coming across some pressures, they cannot move away from the place from where they are getting these pressures. So they need more support in order to be withstanding with those pressures. So most of the plant tissues are supportive tissues. And if these supportive tissues are living tissues, maintaining these supportive tissues is going to become very difficult task, because plants are autotrophic and they have to prepare their own food. And if this prepared food is utilized for the maintenance of these supportive tissues itself, then they will have to suffer a lot. So most of these supportive tissues are dead tissues. So majority of the plant body is filled with supportive tissues, and most of these supportive tissues are dead tissues, so that there will be least amount of energy that is spent for the maintenance of these tissues, since they are not living tissues. Whereas animals have living tissues because they are motile and they can get the food from wherever they are living. If they are not getting the food in one particular place, they can move to another place. And they don't need to have more supportive tissues, since they are motile. If they are facing any external pressures at any place, they can move to another place. The growth of tissues in plants is limited to only certain regions, whereas in animals it is not limited to only certain regions. The growth of tissues takes place throughout plant life, whereas the growth of tissues takes place only up to a particular period of time in animal life. Plant tissues are classified as meristematic or dividing tissues and permanent or non-dividing tissues. Plant tissues are classified as dividing and non-dividing tissues. There is no such division in animals because in plants the growth of tissues is limited to only certain regions. So in those regions only the tissues will divide. In other regions the tissues will not divide. So the tissues which are present in growing regions are dividing tissues. The tissues which are present in non-growing regions are non-dividing tissues. In animals, there is no such demarcation of dividing and non-dividing tissues because growth takes place uniformly in all the regions of animal body. In animals, far more specialized structural organization of organs and organ systems is present than compared to complex plants because of the different modes of nutrition, different modes of transportation, different modes of respiration. Because of all these things, animals have far more specialized structural organization of organs and organ systems than compared to complex plants. Plant tissues are divided into two types. I already have told you, dividing and non-dividing. Dividing tissues are also known as meristematic tissues, and non-dividing tissues are known as permanent tissues. Meristematic tissues, they are the dividing tissues. They are classified into three types based on the region where they are present. What are those three types of meristematic tissues? Apical meristems, intercalary meristems, and lateral meristems. Apical meristems are present at the growing tips of shoots and roots. Their main function is to increase the length of the plant body. Intercalary meristems are present in between the mature regions of the plant body, and they are present at the bases of the internodes and at the bases of leaf stalks and at the bases of the branches. They help in the elongation of the plant body in between the shoot tip and root tip. Lateral meristems are present at the lateral region of the stem and root, mostly in dicot plants. They cause the increase in the girth size or diameter size of the plant body. And the cells of the meristematic tissues have dense cytoplasm, and they have thin cellulose-made cell walls, and they have prominent nuclei, and they do not have vacuoles. Why they do not have vacuoles? Because these cells are actively dividing cells. So waste materials or broken materials are not generally formed in these cells, and the vacuoles are generally meant for storage of cell sap that includes the broken biomolecule, that is amino acids, simple sugars, etc., which are not going to be present in these meristematic tissue cells. So vacuoles are absent in these meristematic tissue cells. Coming to permanent tissues are formed by the process of differentiation. What is differentiation? The process of taking up a permanent shape, size, and function by losing the capacity of cell division is known as differentiation. So meristematic tissue cells, after certain divisions, they will lose their capacity of cell division and they will attain the permanent shape, size, and function. The permanent tissues are of two types: simple permanent tissues and complex permanent tissues. The simple permanent tissues are of again three types: parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma. These are called simple permanent tissues because these are made up of only one type of cells. The simple permanent tissues are made up of only one type of cells. Parenchyma, it contains unspecialized cells with thin cell walls. Large intercellular spaces are present in between the cells of the parenchyma tissues. Parenchyma tissue is mainly meant for storage of food, and in green parts of the plant body, parenchyma is involved in photosynthesis by having chlorophyll in their cells. Such parenchyma is known as chlorenchyma. In aquatic plants, the large intercellular spaces are going to have air in them, and as air is filled inside the cells as well as in intercellular spaces of the tissues, it is called aerenchyma. This aerenchyma helps in floating of plant body in the water. And parenchyma cells contain thick amount of or dense amount of cytoplasm, not exactly in the similar quantity of meristematic tissue cells, but to some extent. As protoplasm is present, these cells are considered as living cells. And the main purpose of the parenchyma is providing support by storing the food and by helping in floating in aquatic plants and by helping in photosynthesis by having chlorophyll in it. Collenchyma, the second type of a simple permanent tissue, it is mainly meant for flexibility and mechanical support. Flexibility for easy bending without getting broken. If you take the tendrils of the climbing plants or climbers and the leaf stalks, they keep moving or they keep bending, but they do not get broken. It is because of the presence of collenchyma below the epidermis in these particular structures. As it is allowing the bending of the particular plant part without getting broken, it is providing mechanical support as well as flexibility. Unlike parenchyma, in collenchyma, irregularly thickened cell walls are there. In parenchyma, the cell walls are very thin. Here, at certain parts, especially at corners, the cell walls are thickened in collenchyma. And due to the presence of irregularly thickened cell walls, little intercellular spaces are present, but intercellular spaces are there. And these cells also have protoplasm, so these cells are also considered living cells. Coming to sclerenchyma. One particular point about collenchyma. The cell walls of collenchyma are having suberin, right? Suberin, cellulose, all these are polysaccharide materials or carbohydrates only. Sclerenchyma, third simple permanent tissue. It makes the plant hard and stiff like husk of coconut. Okay, the outer cork or bark of the plant body, etc. The cell walls are lignin made cell walls. The cells are long and narrow cells. Why long and narrow? Because the cell wall is very, very thick, thickened cell walls with lignin. Where these sclerenchymatous tissue is generally present? Around vascular bundles and in the veins of leaves and in hard coverings of seeds and nuts. This sclerenchyma is present. Sclerenchyma provides strength to the plant body. Before discussing about complex permanent tissues, let us discuss about epidermis. Epi means above, derma means skin. Epi means above, derma means skin. So epidermis is the outermost layer of plant body. It is made up of single layer of cells. In dry habitat living plants, thicker epidermis is present because epidermis, it gives protection from water loss. Epidermis is present both in aerial as well as in subaerial parts. Subaerial means below the soil, that is in the root. Aerial means above the soil, that is in the stem. So epidermal cells are present both in aerial and subaerial parts. The epidermal cells on aerial parts, they secrete waxy water resistant layer which is known as cuticle, whereas the subaerial parts, in subaerial parts, the epidermal cells do not secrete waxy layer. This waxy layer that is secreted by the aerial parts of epidermis, it protects the plant body from water loss, from mechanical injury and invasion from fungi. Invasion means entry into the plant body. Generally, the epidermal cells are protective in nature, so they are flat in nature and compactly arranged without having any intercellular spaces. If they are having intercellular spaces, easy invasion of fungi can take place, or easy invasion of other harmful microorganisms can take place. Tiny pores are present in between the epidermal cells, especially in the leaf epidermis. The tiny pores or small pores in the epidermis are known as stomata. These stomata are enclosed by kidney-shaped guard cells. Stomata helps in gaseous exchange and transpiration. If you take the root epidermal cells, they bear hair-like structures known as root hairs. These root hairs increase the surface area for water absorption and they help in water absorption. In desert plants, the cuticle or the waxy layer is very, very thick. Waxy layer is generally impervious to water, so that by having thick waxy layer in desert plants covering the epidermis, it is going to become waterproof, so that transpiration may not take place easily in these desert plants and water loss. Plants are protected from water loss. In older plants, that is in matured plants in the normal regions, the epidermis is replaced by cork, especially in the stem. Cork is formed by the activity of secondary meristem or lateral meristem. Cork cells have subaerial cell walls. They are impervious to gases and they are compactly arranged so that invasion of harmful microorganisms does not take place. Coming to complex permanent tissues. There are two types of complex permanent tissues, xylem and phloem. The complex permanent tissues are generally made up of more than one type of cells. More than one type of cells. These presence of complex permanent tissues are the xylem and phloem, are the vascular tissues, made the survival of terrestrial plants possible. Xylem contains 4 elements: tracheids, vessels, parenchyma and fibers. Parenchyma means xylem parenchyma, fibers means xylem fibers. Tracheids and vessels are tubular structures. They actually play the role of water conducting and mineral conducting. Water and mineral transport takes place vertically by these tracheids and vessels. Xylem parenchyma stores the food and xylem fibers are supportive in nature. Phloem, it is made up of 5 types of cells: sieve cells, sieve tubes, companion cells, phloem parenchyma and phloem fibers. Except phloem fibers, remaining all type of phloem elements are living, whereas phloem fibers are dead cells. Sieve tubes are tubular in nature and they are having perforated cell walls, means they contain holes in their cell walls and they carry out the transport of food. How this food and water transport takes place, that we can learn in class 10th. So remaining animal tissues area we will discuss in the next class. Thank you.